Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about developing a strong stomach. So, in this sense, it's not related to the foods that you eat, being able to handle spicy or very strong odors, but it's being able to handle just the highs and the lows of what you go through. It's that feeling when your stomach just drops, when you get some very hard hitting news about things that, really kind of just make you feel fatigued and almost weak, like you're about to pass out. Maybe it's like getting punched in the nose, getting that shock where your vision is blurry, a rush of blood just invokes that feeling of desperation and you get wobbly. This is something that can be developed to handle those moments that requires getting acclimated to certain scenarios and experiences so you're working your way into it. At the same time, it's going to help you handle those very euphoric moments to help you avoid getting so carried away from doing things that are reckless. We all have certain boundaries that are needed to help us from unnecessarily needing to experience such devastating experiences like dangerously speeding in a car that puts you and others in potentially fatal situations. Car accidents can still happen even when going the speed limit, but it's reducing the chance of going through potential catastrophes. Sometimes these moments can happen because of the rush or that high that you could be on. You're overestimating your abilities to handle it, only to later find out, what was I thinking? Experiencing your stomach dropping or what seems like a very sharp sensation in your stomach is because you're sensing danger or worry of the things that obviously could harm you. And this triggers that emotional response to get you to act right away, to get out of what's perceived as a very dangerous situation. This is very important to listen to because it's going to help you get to safety, such as a fire in the house, you got to get out. Or suffering a deep cut that causes significant bleeding, you need to call 911 or you got to treat it right away. And this can be the difference in your overall well-being. But beyond the life or death type of situation that you encounter, or even just the overall safety of yourself, such as being on top of a roof and you slipping, your stomach could drop because of the fear of falling off and really injuring yourself significantly. There's going to be other times where the same feeling is invoked even when it's not surrounded around your overall well-being. So things like falling short of getting the promotion that you were after, or the grade that you were working for, or getting into the college that you always wanted, or losing games in sports. That same feeling can still happen even though you're relatively safe. So these scenarios are where developing and having a strong stomach is really going to help you out tremendously, because you're going to be able to process those experiences that translate into valuable information and lessons that you can apply going forward. And the better that you can handle these moments, to take on more ambitious things, even in the face of risks that lie out there, you can rebound from the setbacks that are experienced to remain steadfast in your pursuits. As a kid, I always had a hard time losing and would often cry. Even things like musical chairs. Each time I lost, I would cry. And one time I went crying to my mom because I lost. And generally, she would always comfort me and also talk to me about, hey, that's how the games work. And this one time at a birthday party, losing in musical chairs, I went crying to her. And she immediately tells me, if you don't want to experience losing, then don't play. That kind of made me abruptly stop crying, but I was like, dang, I need to figure out something. The next time I remember we went to somebody's party and she said, they might have musical chairs. And she says to me, if you want to play, you got to promise me not to cry if you lose. And I was like, okay. Each time I lost, I would still have that same type of feeling of my stomach dropping. By me being more aware of how I reacted, it began to develop a less weak stomach and being more focused on not giving into that feeling of everything is falling apart. This helped me to handle myself a little bit better, and each time I could just do the same. Just handle it a little bit better. Obviously, it would still hurt, but it prepared me to take on things that were challenging. This actually was a good transition for me once I started playing organized sports. So before, like I said, I would cry, each time I'd lose. But by me being able to experience that and get that feedback from my mom of how I can better handle myself, it made me conscious going into those scenarios. I remember when I first played Little League organized football, there were a lot of players that their skill set and their talent was more advanced. They were just better. And while it was difficult for me to process, it allowed me to not so much feel bad about myself, but learn what they did well and how I can apply that and use what I already have to my own advantage. And you can follow this same type of concept to really help you handle difficult and challenging moments, because we all know they're going to come. It's just, how can we effectively prepare ourselves to avoid them from derailing the momentum that we built, the confidence that we have, and just that want to continue to forge ahead. It's so easy when things are going well, when things are going smooth, to have that wanting to keep going. But we all get tested at some point with some sort of resistance, some sort of wall that makes us question and reevaluate, can I do this? And maybe even, do I want to continue to do this? As you're progressing through school, as you're working towards the career, the business that you want, or you're building the life that you want, you're going to face this at some point, and maybe even multiple times. So when things get hard, is that the time to pack it in and say, you know what? I'm going to do something that's easy. But you got to remember, what's easy is probably not going to be satisfying. And having a strong stomach is going to help you see it through, where you can work your way through what's difficult, to chip away at it, where it becomes a little less difficult and a little less difficult, and it just becomes a little bit more and more doable. If you just take a look at people like Nathan Hanracker, who founded Nathan's Hot Dog, he slept at the hot dog stand that he worked at just to save up enough to buy that first stand. And then from there, he expanded to, create the most recognized hot dog stand that many of us know. Henry Heinz is another great example. The founder of Heinz, the ketchup and condiment company. His company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he was even arrested because of being accused of hiding assets from creditors. But he was still able to see it through, to preserve even during the panic of the Depression of 1873. These are all just great examples of those that have had strong stomachs to be able to withstand those difficult and intense moments, while even though they were worried and maybe even questioned whether they can accomplish what they set out for. Henry Heinz, he actually fell into a depression, barely being able to get out of bed during that trying time. But these people show us that one can really preserve and figure out solutions to the adversities that they face. Somewhere along the line, they develop that type of fortitude to be able to not take the easy way out, not take the easy route, to not give up on what they're pursuing, but find a way to fight that natural feeling of wanting to give in. And essentially, that's what we're doing. We're kind of fighting that natural feeling that we have when we experience disappointment, sadness, or fear. Being able to decipher in what moment, when you get that feeling of your stomach dropping, is this a life or death situation, or is this merely those hardship, those challenges, those setbacks? Sometimes these moments can come and are an opportunity to step back, to reevaluate things, because maybe the approach that's being taken is not working out. Maybe it needs to be tweaked a little bit, or maybe it needs to be changed completely to find what works for you. Having that strong stomach is going to be able to allow you to think through, to work your way through it, because obviously the day-to-day is still going to feel very unsettling, very gut-wrenching to know that that dark cloud of uncertainty is just hovering over you. And as all of us know, change is inevitable. So there's always going to be that sense of uncertainty of what is yet to come that throws us off, whether it's finances, health, relationships, business, professional, whatever it is. There's always going to be some level of no clear path. There could be that surprise of, the water heater broke. Now that's $1,000 that's needed to get a new one. Or that you find out that you have high blood pressure and now you got to give up the foods that you really enjoy, those salty foods that you really, really like. Or maybe you lost a great friendship. These are all examples where it's pretty common to have those gut-wrenching moments. It's best to just face these issues instead of ignoring them, because that's only going to compound the problem later on. But when you can just aim to resolve what you face, the better off you'll tend to be, because enough time has been given to correct things. So just start to get acclimated to those things that invoke some of that gut-wrenching experience. You can even make it enjoyable in a sense, going on a roller coaster ride because you literally have that, oh my gosh, I'm about to fall off this, only to have that relief of, whew, I made it. It could be entering a pumpkin carving contest for Halloween, knowing that others are also entering that are really good at it, yet you do it anyways, and if you're not the winner, your willingness to take the risk of suffering defeat chips away at that sensitivity of coming up short. When you do these types of things, you're transitioning, you're getting more experience with that uncomfortableness that just makes you want to flee. And the more that you can do this, the more familiarity you get that makes it a little less scary and gain a little bit more confidence that you can navigate your way through it. Essentially, you're building confidence in taking on challenging things. Then you can just build momentum in that same direction, being able to take on something a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging that allows you to better handle the wild swings. If we just take a look at school, for example, the purpose is to acquire information to better equip yourself so you can make a living. And the goal is to get high grades to potentially have more opportunities in the field of your choice. So one can get high grades yet not be prepared to make a living because maybe they've taken very easy courses that did not challenge them. They may have avoided a lot of unsettling moments of resistance, but that makes it overwhelming when they eventually are on their own. They haven't had a period to get acclimated to it. But someone who did take on challenging courses, and let's say they did okay or not as well grade-wise, tend to be better equipped to handle adversity later on because they've been exposed to coming up short and having experienced enough challenges that makes them more acclimated to it. It's building resilience that allows composure to be more prominent in those moments. This is taking the long-term approach, understanding that while in the short term, it's going to be very trying and stressful, it's a great developmental opportunity because that exposure helps you work through weak areas to see how you can improve or work around them. Being able to settle into these types of scenarios gives you a better idea of how you handle yourself. And this awareness helps you gain perspective to when the pain or that uncomfortableness is felt. It's not as sharp, and this is going to help prevent you from overreacting. A great example of this is the stock market because it measures performance in time and money. While it's unclear what's going to happen in the short term, this makes volatility high in the market when any surprising news comes about in both directions. It goes up and down. There's always going to be things that pop up without clearly being aware of what was coming. Two things we know that will happen in the market is that it's going to fluctuate up and down, and over time, the market will generally be higher in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Over the past 100 years, depending on how you look at the market, there have been more than 50 market declines. About 20 of those declines have been by 25% or more. But within a 2-year time frame, it's uncertain. And about once every 2 years, the market falls by 10%. During this time, 25 years out of the last 100 years, the stock market has been negative for the year. That's 25% of the time the market is down for the year. But over 100 years, the return has been 10% annually, totaling 1,000% increase during those 100 years. So while it's uncertain what's going to happen in the short and medium term, history has shown that the market goes up over time. So this means that investors that are in the market are going through some sort of discomfort and pain watching the value of their investments go down. But if they invest in companies that are strong, are financially fit, efficient in how they operate, and have good leaders in place, then over time, the company stock price is going to appreciate. For those that are willing to stay with those strong companies, they'll eventually be rewarded for their patience and their resolve. And it's because their ability to stomach those sharp market declines. The market, just like people, can be unreasonable, driven by fear and panic. So when anything uncertain occurs, it makes them very jittery, wanting to sell everything. So it's basically the concept of shoot first, ask questions later. Because there's so much uncertainty in both directions, positive and negative, things can turn really quickly, and there's not an all clear sign that signals, all right, it's safe to invest. By that time, it's too late and everybody is euphoric. The most gains come from the riskiest, most uncertain times, being able to fight the instinct of running for the hills, keeping your money saved, because when everybody else is giving into that feeling, there are very few focused and composed people that take advantage of it. It's not so much that they're the most intelligent, but it's that they have the stomach for it. They prepared themselves for this. They've conditioned themselves for it. And this allows their emotions to be kept in check so they can invest more with their head instead of with their gut. One of the more well-known successful investors is the late Charlie Munger. He was Warren Buffett's right-hand man in running Berkshire Hathaway and managing it from a couple millions into multi-billions. And he says that if you're not willing to be down 50% on your stocks, then you don't deserve to own them. You don't deserve the rewards that come with those stomach-churning events. This is an extreme case that he's talking about, but shine some light on it. Even him and Warren Buffett, as well experienced and successful as they've been, are willing to go through those very turbulent times when it seems like it's only going to get worse from there and there's no end in sight. Warren Buffett has once said that if he had to choose between having the brains or the demeanor to be able to successfully invest, he said he would choose the demeanor to be able to just sit there and not get caught up with emotions and see the facts for what they are to make a reasonable investment decision. And the more that you can develop the stomach to handle difficult moments, it really does keep your emotions in check. Not so much to ignore them, but to not let them drown out your head, the thinking side of your brain, to process what's going on, to get past the noise and see what's relevant and important. It's such a natural thing that when things are going bad, that you want to pull whatever you have, salvage whatever you have, but sometimes you got to just let things play out, to just let things settle down so you can have a better perspective to see what happened. And the more exposure that you can reasonably get in developing a strong stomach, that's going to strengthen your grit to be able to work at things, not dissuade by the lack of results in the short to medium term. This is part of the human nature of wanting to see results of what we're working towards. And when we don't, we get discouraged, usually wanting to move on from it to something that is going to bear fruit of the labor that was put in. And sometimes these great things that people achieve are because it was a long journey that it took to get there. While there were probably some wins here and there, and there are probably some big significant milestones along the way, sometimes they can be very few from one to another, where it's just a drought of success, a drought of victories. It's just continuously coming up short. This process can test a person's real want to continue. We want to feel validated for what we're doing. And when we don't, we move on from it. Sometimes it's justifiable, and other times it means missing out on a great opportunity. And the great thing about grit is that it can make up for your weaknesses and deficiencies that you might have. We know that each of us brings our own strengths, those skills and talents that one naturally has and has developed. And when that's not enough, the grit can make up for it a lot of the times. So if a person feels like, dang, I'm not smart enough to run my own business because I'm unfamiliar with the finance side of it, even though they might know the logistical side of running a furniture company. Well, the good thing is that you've identified the weaknesses and you can either work on it to be competent and maybe even be stronger at it, where you're almost willing your way, you're forcing your way to understand how the finance side works. Or maybe you decide you can hire somebody else to do it for you. But that stomach dropping feeling in this scenario helps you to reevaluate, hey, should I take a whack at it trying to learn this or get somebody else to do it for me? So each time you can invoke that stomach dropping, stomach churning feeling, it's conditioning you to effectively manage your emotions, to not get carried away by them and to listen to them, use them to your advantage by taking a little bit of time to process so you can take in that right perspective that's needed to move forward. In some cases, with repeated coming up short, with repeated failures, having a strong stomach is going to be able to help you evaluate what is working and what isn't, and pivot away from what isn't working. This brings humility so you can avoid pounding your head when a certain approach is not working. Sometimes we get hard-headed and thinking, I can make this work this way. I can make it work. But sometimes when you have that self-awareness to reevaluate, that humility is going to help you tell yourself, you know what? This approach is not effective. Let's take it another way. So come to see your stomach not so much in a literal sense, but more from an emotional sense as a buffer to how much it can handle before you panic. Aim to have a big buffer so that panic button is not so sensitive, so you can stand in the heat of the kitchen to do what you come to do, which is prepare a dynamite meal, and not so much be scared out of the kitchen because of the flames that have been sparked. And for those of you that do cook, we realize that to make a good meal, sometimes the kitchen gets messy. This same concept is also going to serve you well during those very good times. To have the emotions kept in check, to limit the ego from taking over that can cause destruction. That same buffer will be able to decipher the lure of what seems too good to be true and to avoid the excess of what's really good. This keeps you grounded, staying even keeled. That helps you maintain your focus on what's really important. Charlie Munger sums up the concept of having a strong stomach that served him well on both ends, where it protects him from making stupid decisions. He says that he treats both a bear and a bull market in the stock market both the same as imposters because they lead to extremes that they can get out of hand that distorts what's really going on. So when things are euphoric, that's the time to be cautious because too many people are falling asleep at the wheel of risk that leads to an eventual crash. And when things are abysmal, that is when opportunity is screaming to take it. Back up the truck because those moments are very rare. Everyone is just sitting on the side waiting for confirmation that, are things okay? So a strong stomach is just going to help you absorb the shock in whatever you experience, to maintain your footing, to respond effectively, so you can go at things that you really want to pursue. Developing it is going to make the highs and lows less overwhelming so you can achieve many great things. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right. Until next time.